Welcome to the Barbershop Podcast. My name's Scott. I'm the host of this podcast and also the owner of the barbershop which it's set in. So I'm going to explain for the people just listening to this audio and not watching it visually. I've got a barbershop which is really unique. It's not like a lot of these barbershops you see. It's really homely. And I find with that people open up and talk to me. And this is where this idea come years ago. Funny enough, with Joe, who's one of my first guests, this is one of the reasons I'm doing it, because Joe pushed me to do it. So every day I talk to 20 plus people and they tell me stories, and I just thought they've got amazing stories. Even when they think they're not interesting, they really are. And that's what I wanted to do this podcast for, is to bring them conversations to everybody else. So this is what I've done, and I couldn't be happier today with the two guests I've got. So I've got Paul. He's going to tell you his journey and what he's been through with mental health. And I've also got Joe, the star. Not really, Paul, you're both a star. But no, Joe's the one I've got to give props for. He pushed me. But with Paul, he's also given me a lot of confidence when I've talked to him in the shop, because I've myself suffered with mental health for many years and we've talked about it openly. So I just want to say a big thank you to you two for coming on today. And I'll hand the floor over to whoever wants to go first.
No, it's our pleasure, man. It's like you said a minute ago. It's like you don't think the stories, we think nothing of the stories that we tell to you, but then you said that they're interesting. Like, I'm a big podcast listener. Like, anytime I'm in the car, I've got to listen to a podcast, and then I think, oh, I'd be meant to be on a podcast, and then you think, well, these people are on these podcasts because they're celebrities, or for me, they're football players and the ex-coaches or whatever, and you just think, right, well, it's nice to think about the idea of being on a podcast, but then obviously, since you started this, I thought, I'd love to come on, and I'm gonna speak about the stuff that I was saying to Paul earlier before recording, that only really you've heard in the past, or my family or my girlfriend or my close friends have heard before. And I said, I work a job where you'd think, hang on, how can you do that when you say, your anxiety's so bad? So it'd be, it's a bit of a, like the whole thing. It's good to talk.
Yeah, it's a bit of therapy.
It'd be nice to get it out. Yeah.
Men need to talk more. And this is one of the reasons also for the podcast, is to get people like yourselves who are courageous enough to come on here, open up, because hopefully, thousands of people will see this. And if it helps one person, it helps everybody. That's what my big aim is in this podcast. It's to help people and give people a voice. So I'm just a conduit. So I said, so if you want to tell me now how your journey with mental health started, and I'll let you just run with it, and I'll jump in if I feel necessary.
So for me, it was a strange one, because I kind of grew up, and as a kid, these things aren't apparent to you. So I've always been, a pretty mass panicker as a kid, but without knowing it, just thinking these things. And like, if my mum left the house to walk the dog for 20 minutes and it had been 30, I'd be belling her and ringing her, where are you? Are you okay? What time are you back? And then if I still hadn't heard anything, I'd be messaging her friends, oh, do you know where do you know where my mum is? She went walking the dog, and all this. And I've had, all these kind of problems, and it affected me in certain ways, kind of growing up with, being such a worrier and a panicker. And I was a very scared kid growing up as well. Like, the littlest things would frighten me. So it's like the strangest ones I can think back to is like things like learning about the Victorians in school kept me up at night. And there's nothing scary about a Victorian person, but this is the thing. It's like the littlest things would put that kind of weird fear in me. And when I look back at it now, I used to just look, oh, I was a bit of a wuss and that, but now when I look back at it, was it the early signs that these worries with anxiety were starting to develop, and into my adult life it's just become slightly different to what it was as my kid life, because as a kid it's normal to be worried and scared and frightened.
Can you remember your first time? Your very, very first time you felt, and how did it feel to you?
So yeah, it was in high school, and in high school, I did have this kind of like quiet confidence about myself. So I wasn't massively like popular or anything like that, but I did have this sort of like, I was just there to mess about and have fun, you know what I mean? Like, me and the group of friends I had, like, at the time, it was just, everything's a joke. So, we weren't those type that moped around or took everything too seriously. It was the opposite. So, obviously, sometimes that came across to some of the teachers, that I was, we're always messing. And I'd be, I was never really in trouble. I wasn't in that kind of category, but I was more just silliness. So
Was it a mask?
well, no, at this time, this is just me going about things, and then this is where I clocked this. I haven't got that word right. So I'd been like, took out of the class or had a word with, and it's never like really bothered me, but I wasn't doing it to annoy anyone. I was more just like, again, just silly.
Yeah.
And then there was one time I remember I was in one of my ICT lessons, and I had a drink, and obviously I don't know if you remember from like your IT classes, like, don't bring your drink in here, don't get it on the PC.
I'm a bit older than you, so we weren't allowed drinks anywhere.
Yeah, so I was like, so I took it in, and obviously you're sneaking it in. It's in your inside pocket of your blazer or whatnot. I remember having a sip of it, and I got caught with having the sip, and he stood me up and sort of said, gone for it, why, and usually I would have just gone, oh yes, I've had it before. I was like, sorry sir, yeah, or no, I'll just bin it, and I just remember like freezing up, and I'm just sort of listening to him, but then everything just sort of went, and then I could feel my heart going, constant bang, 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 and I felt my face going red, and then at that point I know other people are noticing this, and this is around year 9 or 10 time, and I was like, I'm gonna cry here.
Yeah.
And I weren't even in trouble. He was just saying, stood me up, why have you got a drink in here? And I was just like, and I felt myself, what? And as I was answering him back, my voice is wobbling, and I'm shaking, and I'm like, I sat back down, obviously bin the drink, if anyone wants to know what I did with the drink. And then, like, the kids stood around me slightly more popular or whatever than me. It's like, why do you think you're going to cry? And I'm like, I'm not. He went, you got bright red. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. And then, like, little do they know, felt like I was going to cry, and I was just like, but
So
I didn't.
did that make it worse? Did that, that the negative aspects of it, people talking to you negatively rather than supporting you?
I think that's what got me, because I didn't think much of it at the time. I just thought, maybe this is a bit of a one-off. He's just caught me unexpectedly, and that's why. But it was the fact that there's visual representations now. So, like, going bright red, wobbling, you can hear it in my voice sometimes, and it's like, that's what got me, because I thought, this is noticeable now. This is noticeable. So it's one of them where, am I going to have to answer for it every time? And now I know people are noticing me, the pressure's on. And that's kind of just where my first memory of where it all kind of went wrong. And then it just, I've had little bits like that since, in different scenarios, and ultimately in set places it has impeded me, and
Well, how do you deal with that then, as an adult now? Because that was your childhood, which sounded like you went through some really bad times. Just to go back on your childhood before we go to your, the adult stages of your dealing with this mental health issue. Did you have any role models or any support network helping you at the time?
So I was at my kind of worst with it in college, because it was happening all the time. So any time I had to speak in front of in front of the group, it was the same.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get it done quick. And at this point, because I'm now like, 17, 16, 17, 18, I'm like thinking, right, this isn't good, this, because, in my head, I'm turning into a bloke now.
Yeah, yeah. Did you feel that weighed more on your shoulders because you've seen yourself now? You're not a child anymore.
Yeah.
You're an adult now.
Yeah.
And you think that compounded, like you said, the beating heart, the sweats, the red face?
100%, because it's a case of, even in high school, you don't want to be the kid that cries. And it's never got to the point where I've not been able to like control it, but there's been points where I'm thinking, this is it now. And in front of my college group, which was I went to a football college, so it was, at the time, it's my footy teammates that I'm doing this classwork with, and I'm trying to get things done as fast as I can, and they ask me, because I can feel it, it's instant. It's like, but for a whole like 2-hour class, unless we're working, when you're actually getting on with your work, everyone's just doing it and having a chat on your table. Unless it was that, I was spending the whole 2 hours, my heart going like this, thinking, don't ask me anything. And at this point, I don't know if I can go and tell people that I don't know what it is, but every time I get put on the spot, I feel like my body is going to cry for me. I don't want to cry. I'm not sad. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a cry when you're sad or upset, but it's like a sneeze.
Yeah.
For me, you can feel a sneeze coming, and if you're gonna sneeze, you're gonna sneeze. Yeah. There's things you can do to try and stop it, but there was a point where I just thought, I haven't got a way out here, because if it happens, it's gonna happen, and it's like my body's forcing it out, like exactly like a sneeze. And I look at other people and I think, right, so why? So when they're getting stood up, I'm just like, they don't look like that. They've not gone bright red, and they're not trembling, and they're not shaking. And I thought, it's not right, this. So I was a bit reluctant at that time as a teenage boy, where you're supposed to be kind of showing everyone like you got a bit of confidence about you and whatnot. You don't want to be dealing with things that are embarrassing.
No.
And at that time, I was massively embarrassed, so I was always worried about it then. So it wasn't fully affected. As soon as I got out, I was happy. It's fine. It wasn't like I was going home thinking, got to do that again tomorrow. It was like, it's just more as soon as I step in that room, I'm like, oh no.
So what did you use to cope? You just explained perfectly how it affected you physically, mentally. So to get through the physical and mental effects of the mental health issue, anxiety, if I can call it that, or panic attack, what coping mechanisms did you use yourself? Or wasn't there any? Did you just grind it out?
There's none. I was just at the time I was riding them out, and this is still at the point where you're not thinking massively about mental health, as much as we are now.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot better now, isn't it? It's a lot more out. It's open. Look at this. We do it. I've got two blokes here.
Yeah, exactly.
20 years ago,
exactly.
I guarantee would not be sat here. I mean, when I started barbering 16 years ago, blokes didn't talk like they do now. They're only just opening up.
Yeah.
It's good. I want people to open up and be as honest as they can be with mental health. I think the stigma's still there. You know what I mean? It's still inwardly, people are ashamed, and they shouldn't be. Nobody should be ashamed. But like you know how you're perfectly explaining what you've been through, and I just want to say well done on getting through them early years.
Well, it wasn't turning aggressive, like whereas getting home and being depressed about it, and I've never been one of them to just let things bother me. I appreciate everything in life, so I'm very easygoing that way. You have your bad days. Everyone has their bad days, but yeah, at that time there wasn't anything. But I ended up kind of reaching out to my mum about it when I got home, and I said, "Mum, listen," my body keeps feeling like it's gonna cry in like class or in college, and I'm just like, or in the changing room, like, don't want to.
Yeah.
And at this time, bearing in mind, like the whole point of my course is that it's training you to go and work within football.
Yep.
Which is never, there's barely ever going to be a scenario where I won't have to speak in front of people and stuff.
Which is nerve-wracking for anybody, no matter if you've got a mental health condition or not. It doesn't matter. I think even if you haven't got a mental health condition, talking in front of people is it's hard. It's really hard. It takes a lot of guts.
No, it does, and it was one of those where I was saying to my mum, I was like, what should I do about this? Because I don't know what it is, like, but I'm struggling to handle it, like, when it's happening. Like, I said it's obvious to everyone. And no one ever, like, pulled me up.
But was it obvious to everyone, or was it just you presumed it was obvious to everybody?
I had it in my head that it was obvious to everyone.
Did anybody ever say anything to you?
I've only ever been pulled up on going bright red. Right. And it's because it's a bit of a banter. You got to remember, like, these are my mates and stuff.
It's a lot of pressure.
So these are like, yeah, why have you got so red and all this? Like, why are you so worried? Yeah, it's like, that's what I used to say. It's because I'm hot, or because I just picked some off the ground or something. But in my head, it was visual to everyone. So my mum said, you know, it might be some form of like anxiety. She struggles with it as well. So she said, go to the GP and see what they say. So I just sort of told them at the time, this keeps happening. It's not ideal. In fact, it's far from ideal. I need it to kind of stop. And obviously, there really isn't that many solutions, because you've got your medication, which I've been in not too long ago, which we'll probably get to, where the doctor sort of said, I don't want to put you on it. Like, you'll become a bit reliant on it, and you're still a young lad. So I was like, yeah. And then you've obviously just got distraction techniques.
CBT.
And then I've also been on CBT, yeah. So that kind of therapy I had a bit of a course of, which is obviously in a latter time, which we can touch on. But at that time I was kind of out of answers, so I just went to my tutor and I said, listen, we stop standing me up in front of everyone because I'm struggling. And then we sort of went through it that way, and they were very supportive, had an arm around me. So if I needed a bollocking in a changing room for having a bad game, they'd save it, and he'd just tell me after, or he'd sort of touch on it lightly, but then make sure, like, I know that, you know, you're lucky you didn't get a bollocking there. And you know, my tutor was the same, and they were dead supportive in the end. And I ended up telling my mate that I used to go to college with. Told him, like, and I, since going in there, I started to tell a few, but I was still like a little bit. I don't want everyone to know.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff. So.
Bit guarded.
Yeah, because it wasn't cool.
No.
And you want to be cool, you know what I mean? So it's like. That was the problem. You don't want to come across as.
So that was at college.
That's college, yeah.
So now you've gone from college. Obviously now you're older, and you're at work. Can you tell us about the transition from going from college to the work environment, which is completely different, obviously?
Yeah. So, for a bit of context, I've been a sports coach for about 11 years now, since I was 15, 26 now. So, I've at that time I was thinking, how on earth did I do this? I can't even get up in front of all my teammates and talk. Never mind dealing with a group full of kids all the time and talk in front of them, and then talk in front of the parents at the end, you know, giving medals or prizes or whatever. So there was a point where I first started where it was totally different. Like, in front of the kids or out on the pitch, I was fine. Yeah. Not a problem. And I used to just pass on to, or I used to say to my mum, I don't like doing the prizes. Are you okay to give mine out while I'll pick the cones up, whatever? So in my work environment, it's not been the worst, and I've eventually got, now I can speak in front of parents and kids alike to a point. It's if I've had too long to marinate it or something. If I have to just if I've had to just go in and do it. But in front of like the groups of kids that I coach or I teach at school, nothing. Absolutely not even a shiver.
Really?
Yeah.
So you don't overthink things?
No, but
That's
I
amazing.
think I'm comfortable with them because
overthinking is the worst. Like
Yeah.
I'm overthinking now if that camera's now recording. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
it is.
100%.
But it's just listening to your story is amazing because how you've done it by yourself, really. You said the GP and your mum's helped you, but you've come to these, you know, when I asked you early on about the coping mechanisms and you said you didn't really have any. You have. You've just not assigned them a name.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, that's
you have got coping mechanisms, but you just don't give them a label.
Yeah.
In a world we've got labels for everything. It's quite it's quite refreshing listening to somebody who's got a way of coping, but it's not a specific way. It's just to you. It's personal to you.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is great. I think it's you've explained from the childhood to your work. Now, would you be willing to explain what it's like with a loved one, you know, a partner? Does that affect you? You know, do you know if you want to go into that, you don't have to, but
yeah. So in like the early stage, I've been with my girlfriend for 6 years now. You know, just more. So it's one of those where early stages I was a bit the same. I was a bit like, you know, I was always worrying, you know, because I was, you know, I was really invested and then but since then it's not really caused many issues. Just those early days where we were trying to build something and I wanted it to work and there's all that pressure on it. But now she's just really supportive of me and how I am and knows how it is, and you know, we've got absolutely no issues behind that because she knows exactly.
That's beautiful. That's what you need, isn't it? You need somebody to have your back.
100%. But she knows exactly how it is, and she knows that I can worry, and I think she can tell when I'm a little bit like, you know, worried, because sometimes it can come out in frustration as well. So like one of the biggest stresses I've got with my coaching life at the minute is planning sessions. Yeah. Like when you were running around earlier, like, is this on, is that on? When I put a session on, I have to plan it right. If I've not planned it right, it doesn't work and it's noticeable to players.
I feel you on that.
So if I've made a cock up, it's on me. And the club that I'm working in at the minute, where it's like kind of like semi-pro adult football, which is something I'd never thought I'd be able to coach adults, by the way.
Well, just because of the anxiety and...
Yeah, I don't like talking in front of adults, but I've, again, just conquered that. And
that's why you could talk to me, innit? Because I'm not an adult.
Man-child, yeah.
Yeah, a man-child.
But yeah, no, I never thought I'd be able to go into adults coach, never really something I considered, but then ended up going that way, and I do love it. Yeah. And I love it because I can push myself as a coach that way, whereas with the kids, I struggle to be, I just want to be fun with them. Yeah. I want to be fun and enjoy it, and I don't want to be too development on them. I just want them to enjoy seeing me and doing things like that I ask them to do and stuff, whereas with the adults, so it was more a test for me, and it kind of gave me a big push with my anxiety. Like, got over it in a sense that I was happy to do a team talk for them, and then I went on to my C license, which is like your level 2 for football. Which again, I've got a bit of PTSD with classrooms and classroom scenarios since school, college, so I could have done it way earlier, but I'd been putting it off, and eventually I thought, you know, I'll give it a go. You get an email basically saying, you've got a spot, do you want it? It was the first time I'd ever had the email, so I thought, yeah, go on, we'll do that then. And then leading up to it, I was like, oh my, why have I signed up for this? Like, I can't, a room full of strangers, I can't. And then I got in touch with the FA and the tutors that were going to be on the course, and they were brilliant. Like, the first hour I was at the first face-to-face day, 'cause you have to go on a few throughout the year. The first hour of me being there, sat on a table full of people I didn't know, not knowing whether I'm going to have to talk in a minute. Yeah. I remember texting my missus saying, I've got to go home, mate. I was like, I need to go home. Like, I can't do it. And then she's obviously, it'll be okay. And then we had like a 15-minute break where you can go get a brew. And one of the tutors came to me, tapped me on the shoulder, and she went, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm good, how are you?" And then she went, No, like, are you okay? We got, because they didn't reply to the email I sent.
Right.
So she said, "No, we got your email." And said, "If you're struggling, let us know." Right. So I said, "Oh, well, it's been it." I would have told you that at the beginning, but... Yeah, but I think they're the same. They've got a course to run and people to get through. So, and I always think back to this tutor at the minute because of how well she dealt with me and how supportive she was. And then when we headed out onto the pitch from the classroom to do some stuff, she walked with me and she was asking me questions about it. And then she said, "Oh yeah, it's not easy."
What was she called?
She's called Jackie Cooper.
Well done, Jackie Cooper.
Just for a bit of a shout out.
Yeah, big shout out to Jackie Cooper.
Absolutely unbelievable, and she is obviously the one that ended up coming assessing me, and just she gave me that comfort, which was brilliant. And then I'm currently on my B license, where again I was thinking the same, because I know it's tougher, I know there's a lot more pressure, I know there's a lot less support. And I got offered a place again on email, and I was like, right, this is a good one. Like, if I can get this certificate, I've pretty much achieved like my short-term goals for getting the badges and that kind of experience. So I rang her and I said, "Jackie, I'm sorry to bother you, but I've been offered a place in the B," and I said, "Are you gonna be on it? Do you know?" And she said, "No, I only teach the C." Yeah. So I was basically saying I'm just so worried about it. Like I kind of want to do it because my coaching's been going really well, but I don't want to go. I don't know if I can put myself through the stress if I don't think I'm going to get the support. Yeah. And she said, "Oh, my friend Rob's delivering on that course." So she started ringing and explaining. Brilliant. And then all of a sudden I've got this phone call off this number I don't have saved, and I've answered, and he's got, "It's Rob, I've spoke to Jackie. What's the scenario?" So I've talked through it, and then he's just gone, "Well, we'll keep a lookout for it." So it's not an easy course, but like Jackie's mentioned it to me, we'll keep a lookout for it. So all through Jackie being on that course, I've had that little bit of confident, and now I can deal with those scenarios a bit better. I wasn't too bothered about answering questions in front of the group and talking in front of the group. Pressure comes with delivering a session, because you're scared of failing, you're scared of things going wrong. So that's natural pressure, yeah. But yeah, so they're just the little types of things I've had in the past. But it's mainly been around like classroom, being put on the spot kind of scenarios, or having to talk when I wasn't expecting to.
Lucky
But
exactly. Podcast
this is why it's good, because I can, there'll be people that have maybe worked around me for years that I've maybe mentioned, "Oh yeah, I do have anxiety a little bit," but I've always downplayed mine a little bit, because like I know people that have panic attacks and they're throwing up. I know people that are on medication for it, and
it's a sliding scale, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not one glove fits all.
That's it. It's like I don't like to go around. I've been more comfortable saying to people I've got it. So if I went to, let's say, a job interview next week, I'd be mentioning it. By the way, I've got it, because I've always thought at least they know, and I think that's a bit of comfort in my. Yeah, it gives me a bit of comfort then, but then I don't like to use it as like kind of an excuse as well. I've always found that hard to. I want to talk about. I'm more than happy to now speak about it, because I think that's the best way. But at the same time, it's a bit.
It's still got a stigma. It's still got a stigma. That's brilliant. Thanks for opening up like you have done about this.
More than happy.
And now look at you, a confident young man.
Yeah.
Doing well with your job, with life, your relationship. That's what I say. Brilliant. I'm going to put the mic over to Paul now. Yep. Paul, do you want to just explain your journey and the ups and downs of what you've been through?
Yeah, definitely, mate. Yeah. I just want to start by saying that was really encouraging to hear this young man talking to my right hand side here. I'm 15 years older than you, and it's great to see.
Like brothers.
Yeah. You know, great to see the younger generation are opening up and talking more. So well done for that, mate. And thank you for sharing. Interesting as well, some of the themes you was talking about, anxiety and struggling to speak in front of groups of people and getting panic attacks and think around that those environments. I can relate to all of it. Yeah. So my background is I did 20 years in retail management, and I started off as on a management program when I was 22, 23, and I very, very quickly learned that I had to repress my real self in order to be able to survive in that environment. Yeah. So I remember being pulled up in my early 20s because I got drunk at a work do, and you know, think about the example you're setting to the people that you'll be eventually be line managing, and is that necessarily the right image that you want to portray? So I very, very quickly at that early age suddenly adapted to myself to survive in that environment, which meant suppressing who I was and always trying to come across as, you know, as professional as possible, and so much stress and pressure and thinking about your impact on people and how you talk to them. And yeah, so I mean, I did 20 years in retail management, and it was only about 2 years ago when I had to step away from that career. I was at work one day. I was on a late shift. My wife, we'd had our little boy Lewis, and he just turned 1 year old, and she had to. Yeah, it's been. Yeah, I don't come here for me haircut. It's just. I just want to point that one out. Yeah. So, you know, my wife had. What we assumed was problems with like post pregnancy, so getting out of breath, going upstairs, and you know, wheezing and fatigue and stuff like that, and we just put it down to post-pregnancy and thinking, oh, you know, you've been pregnant for 9 months, and we had IVF to have Lewis, and it was probably the side effects of that. So she went to the hospital to have her bloods done, and they called her back in and they said, oh, you know, we need to get to the bottom of this because your blood levels are really low, so you're losing blood from somewhere. Have you noticed anything? And she was like, no. So they called her into Tameside Hospital for further examinations. And I was literally looking after my son in the garden, and she rang me. She'd been for a camera, and she was really upset and tearful on the phone. And she was like, "I've just had a camera on my bowel," she said, "and I've just seen what I think is a tumour." She said, "My bowel went from pink to this big grey mass, and then it went back to pink again." She said, "And they've said they want to go through the results of the scan, but they're not prepared to do it unless you're here with me." So I was like, "Shit, well, you know, what do we do now?" So we got in touch with Zara's mum and dad, and they came to our house, and as soon as they got there, I jumped in my car and went to Tameside Hospital. I was on a late shift that night, and as soon as I got there, we called into this office with a Macmillan nurse, so you know straight away that it's going to be bad news almost. And she said, yeah, we believe we've seen a tumour in your bowel, you know, and we just need to confirm what it is. She said, but it looks like you've got bowel cancer. And we were like, I just didn't know, you know, what to say or what to think. And obviously we were both like in bits over it. And we came away from that appointment, and we had to wait 2 weeks before the results were through. And I remember driving back home, we're like, your mum and dad are at home, we've not got any milk in the house. And I remember pulling up outside Tesco around the corner here, and we sat in the car, and she was like, you know, whatever happens to me, she said, you know, you and Lewis will be all right. She says, I've got life insurance and I've got death in service at work. She said, so, you know, you and Lewis will be fine. Your future's secure. And I remember thinking, you know, I can't believe we're having this conversation. Yeah. This morning we're having breakfast together, and we were just laughing about the day. And then fast forward a few hours later, and we sat outside Tesco talking about what's going to happen if she dies. And to go from that, I mean, obviously went in, got the milk, and we all spoke about it as a family and stuff. And yeah, so at that point I was working as a store manager, and I think that was in the April, and I carried on working to the July. And I was sat outside work crying in my car. I remember going in one day, and shortly after we'd had that news, and a lady would work with for many years called Lynn. She saw me outside the shop as I was walking into work, and I just saw her and I just broke down crying. And she was like, What's wrong? What's wrong, Paul? What's wrong?" And I was like, "Zara's got bowel cancer, and I don't know what I'm doing." And yeah, I'd be sat in my car crying before going in for the shift. And yeah, and it just came to a point where I could no longer work. I couldn't work with that on my mind, knowing that she was going to have treatment and she was going to have surgery, and we didn't know what was going to be the outcome of it. So it's one of those, I think, when you hit with any sort of trauma like that, your body goes into like fight or flight mode, or sink or swim, and you've just got to like park how you're feeling, which is what I did, parked how I was feeling, and just focus on, supporting my wife to the best ability that I could. And it's been there for my son. He was only 1 year old at the time, and he was just doing 1 day a week at nursery. So, I had to stepped away from work, looked after my wife. She went through treatment, she went through surgery, and thank God she came out of it the other side. And it wasn't till after that, going through that trauma and stuff, and as my wife got better and my son had increased his days at nursery, I actually started to feel like, well, I can't go back to working in retail. Bearing in mind, I've worked in retail since I was 16. I was then 40, and I was thinking, what on earth am I going to do? So I was starting applying for jobs, getting rejected quite a lot, and I'd gone from thinking like, right, well, I'm a store manager, I'll just walk into any job. I've got, 20 years experience in leadership and motivation and coaching people, etc. Surely people will see that on my CV. Absolutely nothing. Didn't even get an interview.
Did you feel left behind?
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because you had that, obviously, the traumatic with your wife. Did you feel like the world, just listening to you then, it sounds like the world moved on, but you stayed when you left your job?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The rest of the world seemed to have moved on.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, do you think that, did you perceive that because of the anguish of what you've been going through with your wife, or do you think it was the world had just moved on in that small amount of time?
You know what? It's funny you should say that, because whenever I always think like when you go back to working somewhere, or if you've ever returned to a job that you used to years ago, and you go back and it's never the same, or when you meet up with friends that you've used to work with, and you're chatting with them, and that vibe and that rapport between you is gone, and it's because time has evolved and the relationships have ebbed away because you no longer have that common point. And I think I probably underestimated how hard it was going to be getting a job as a 40-year-old male.
But had you changed though?
Had I changed?
Do you know what I mean through the trauma? Do you think, did it change you as a person?
100%. I mean, prior to Zara getting diagnosed, I would think nothing of doing to 60 to 70 hours a week at work, and she'd be ringing me at 5 o'clock at night saying, "Where are you?" on my phone. I'd pull my phone out of my pocket and I'd swipe it and put my phone back in my pocket.
Workaholic, would you say?
Borderline. I think because of the pressures that you're on, in retail management, and you if someone's off sick, or you can't get the staffing in to replace it, or it ultimately falls down to you. You're the one who's above everything in that shop, and if something falls apart and it's your fault, or the buck stops with you, so you feel like you've got to be there. And I've probably lived that way for a long time. I mean, I was diagnosed with cancer in my late 20s, and I swore after getting that diagnosis that I wouldn't go back to being the way that I was prior to getting that, and I just did. I did almost buried it all, and then cracked on and moved on with my life and carried on, doing the same stupid shifts that I always did. But I think because it had affected my wife, and because there was a moment in my life where I thought, we just had our little boy, she, there's a possibility that she could, die. It just completely changed my life, and I thought, I can't believe that I was that person in my life who ignored calls from a.
Did you feel guilty?
Working. Oh, 100%, mate. I had a lot of guilt and a lot of ill feeling towards myself for being that person that did that. You know, and I just got swept up in that lifestyle. And I speak to some retail managers now, and you do it, but you don't mean to do it. It just becomes the way of life. And so it was only past that point. So when she got better, and I started to feel like quite low, and I think it was almost like post-traumatic stress. It only affected me after we'd got through it all. And I remember going to see my doctor and talking through it and saying, you know, this is how I'm feeling, and he said, you've gone from an environment where you're talking to, you know, hundreds of people a week to just being there talking about cancer, you know, and looking after your little boy, and you're not having adult conversation anymore. He said, so that's probably taking its toll on you. And he said, you're not working at the minute. He says, so what relationships are you building? Are you talking to people? And I was like, no, I'm not talking to anybody. And there came a point where I remember putting my little lad to bed, and my next door neighbour was loud in the bathroom, and I remember banging on the wall and saying, you know, shut up. And that isn't me at all. I'm not a confrontational person. I'm not. I raced downstairs and knocked on my neighbour's door, and I was like, you know, come on, I've just put him to bed. And at that point, I remember the next day I went to see her and to apologise. I just broke down crying in her house and saying, you know, I can't believe I've done that. I'm so sorry, and I'd never have done that. And I just knew at that point I needed help with my mental health, because I thought, that isn't the person that I want to be. That's not the person that I am.
That was your breaking point.
Yeah, that was my breaking point, yeah. And so he said to me, you know, have you heard of Andy's Man Club? Have you, you know, he said, there's one at the Etihad Stadium, and, you know, I said, oh, no, I've not. He said, why don't you give it a chance? Why don't you go and give it a try? He says, it's, you know, it's just basically a bloke's talking group. He said, go to it and see what you think. So I went, and I thought, to me, a big draw was the fact that it was at the Etihad Stadium. So, you know, I've been a City fan, all my life, you know. So I've got no hair now.
That's why Joel's just moved a little bit away from you.
I just come on there and say, I'm the
Yeah,
only
you give me a
red
dirty
in
look.
it.
Then Joel's like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's over now, Scott. Podcast is done.
So I went to the Etihad Stadium. I remember sitting. I got to there about 6:30. It starts at 7 o'clock. And I sat in my car. And I remember ringing my wife and saying, you know, I'm outside now. And she was right. Oh, you need to go in. So I was like, right. So I got out of my car about 6:57 and just walked through it. And this bloke was stood on the door. He was like, you here for Andy's Man Club, mate? I said, yeah. And he said, come in. Shut me hand, give me a hug. And then we walked in the door. He brewed up for me. He said, help yourself to a biscuit. He said, then go and sit down in the circle. And we start in about 5 minutes. So I did that. And I've been going ever since. It was just a really, like, safe space and an environment to talk about what I've been through. And don't get me wrong, I didn't talk about it straight away. I was very quiet in the first few meetings, and I was just saying, you know, maybe because what I've been, the trauma that I've been through with my wife, and then as it's evolved over time, I've been, you know, getting so much stuff off my chest and talking about it. But it's funny, there's like it's almost like a healing process in sitting in a room, listening to other people talking about what's on their mind and
listening can be so therapeutic. Listening's just as important as talking.
Yeah.
Do you know? I just for personal opinion, I've had that doing my job.
Yeah.
Listening to you guys talk to me openly, and usually just exclusively to me.
Yeah.
I mean, not like this, but exclusively to me, and I've used that as coping mechanism and healing for myself. So I'm a great believer that listening is just as important as talking.
Yeah.
If not more.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, I've seen the progression, not of myself, but from other people too. I've seen people come through the doors there who struggled to speak in the first week, and how they evolve over time because they're in that environment and they've got that safe space, you know. Just creating hope for people. And I think, you know, I've had dark thoughts in my past, and I always used to repress them, especially in my 20s when I was, you know, a manager. I used to lie in bed awake at night thinking, oh, you know, if someone came into, if I had an altercation with someone and they stabbed me in the shop, you know, and I died, or, you know, how many people would be at my funeral? And I used to lie in bed awake at night thinking of these things. And at the time, I just brushed it off and thought, oh, you know, there's nothing to it. But now looking back, I've had a problem with mental health for a long time.
It just wasn't talked about. No.
Yeah.
Are you roughly same age as me?
Yeah, 41 I am.
Yeah,
So.
so roughly, I'm quite a few years older
Yeah.
than you. I know guys that don't look it.
Yeah.
No, but no, yeah, I think that's quite common. And I think if I could get 100 men now to walk in here and sit down and talk, I think a big percentage of them would say exactly what you two have just been going through.
Yeah.
But it's still got that stigma.
Yeah, yeah.
This is what's great about you guys coming on here and talking,
Yeah.
is that you've got the balls
Yeah.
to come and open up and put you out there, because hopefully if this podcast does well and there's a lot of people listening to it or watching it,
Yeah.
it brings other people. Like I'd love to do a podcast with Andy's Man Club,
Yeah.
but I've seen how big they are. I've done my research when you said you was going to come on.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks amazing. What an organisation that is.
Yeah.
Non-judgmental.
Yeah.
They really push that.
Yeah.
I'd love to one day be big enough that they deem they want to come on and talk.
Yeah.
And maybe, get them on and talk, and, that'd be good, getting you back on or you back on with them.
Yeah.
And they can go into more depth, because I think it's a great organisation, and
Yeah.
I know it's one of the bigger ones now.
Yeah.
It wasn't around when I was going through my crisis.
Yeah,
It didn't even exist. None of this existed early when I got diagnosed 20 odd years ago.
Yeah.
So just to listen to your two stories
Yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah.
What would you, if I could ask you to give me like a clip of Andy's Man Club, the best bits, what would you say they are?
The reason why it works so well is the format doesn't change. So every week it's the same. So you have the opening 3 questions, which always remain the same, which is, how's your week been? Give us a positive from your week, and have you got anything to get off your chest? So if you go to any Andy's Man Club up and down the country, I think there's 300 groups now. Those 3 questions will be asked at the start every week. We then have a break where you'd have a tea, coffee, biscuit, just have a chat, go outside, have a smoke, and then you reconvene for the last 2 questions, and they're always designed to end the night on a positive. So you'll find that during that question 3, that's when most men will open up, and they'll talk about, I've heard people talk about drug addictions, gambling addictions, battles with cancer, loved ones dying, all deep conversations that almost you need them 2 questions to build people back up, and so that by the end of question 5, everyone's leaving with a smile on their face.
Good. So you always end on a positive.
Yeah, and that's what works so well. And I think it's a safe space, always ending on a positive, and everybody knows the structure is always going to be the same. So there's that safety in there. So 2 questions now, off the top of my head. So if you could put something on a billboard and it was across the country, one message, what would it be?
It's good to talk.
It's good to talk. Come on, mate, what's yours?
I think that's like, in our scenario, that is the obvious one, really.
Yeah,
It's
that's why I just jumped in.
Yeah,
I was like,
I was
expecting this
half
question.
thinking of that. I hope he doesn't say.
Is it not on the t-shirt?
You can,
Yeah.
I'd also like to say it's good to talk, because I just literally felt like I was putting that down. I weren't expecting that question. But it's also just be honest with yourself, because
Yeah.
if you can't be honest with yourself, you can't be honest with somebody else. So yeah, I think rather you can have it's good to talk then.
Yeah, I'll
Right,
take that
you
one.
have that.
I'll take that
I'd
one.
say be honest with yourself,
Yeah.
because if you're not honest with yourself, at the end of the day, how can you move forward?
Yeah.
That's what I'd look at it. It's like doing this. I have never been so nervous.
Yeah.
Honestly, I haven't slept for about 3 nights. Yeah, I'd just say in a billboard, just be honest with yourself.
Yeah, it's a good one. I said never give up, because I think any sort of like moment of doubt or insecurity or depression, it's just a moment in time and it will pass. You know yourself, if you sat at home and you're feeling quite low, put your phone down, go outside, get some fresh air, go for a walk, go to the gym, have a glass of water. I've put so many things in place in my life in the last 2 years to, really focus on my mental health and being the best person possible that I can be for my wife and my son. And that includes things like I've give up alcohol, so I've done nearly 12 months now without a drink. Go to the gym regularly, I've been going walking, listening to podcasts, shutting off mainstream media.
Do you think that has an effect?
100%.
Do you think
mate.
social media has a massive effect on
Yeah.
you guys?
100%. For me, it did.
I like to be on it, but it's interesting because I watched a video the other day. just a YouTuber I've been watching for years, and basically he grew up doing daft stuff, and now he's sort of a bit of a mix. Now he's a bit older, but he kind of did. It's like a 10-minute video into a study of like, what's it? Is it dopamine?
Yeah, dopamine.
You know, yeah. So
feel good.
Yeah.
So obviously, because he's a YouTuber and you know he runs a few businesses, but they kind of, you know, they'll have people running them, and you know his day kind of consists of either him being at home and doing either making videos or doing something with his day. And he was sort of saying like he has these constant things where I can't relate to a few of them. Like you know he's constant on his vape, but obviously I've never smoked in my life, so you know he says within minutes of him waking up he scrolls on his phone for an hour and vapes, and then he'll have like an energy drink when he doesn't actually need an energy drink, and he's just basically talking about all these different dopamine releases. And I think sometimes I can get stuck there, you know, scrolling. I make TikToks for my coaching now, so sometimes I feel like I'll delete TikTok.
What's it called, your TikTok?
It's just my name, Joe Prole. Yeah, just coaching content. But it's you find yourself scrolling for ages, and he basically got this expert on, and she was sort of saying like, don't completely cut these things out, but manage them. It's like where if I could sit there one night where I've not really got anything to do and scroll for an hour, which after the hour I feel a bit like that was a bit of a waste of an hour, but I've worked a full day's work. So she was kind of saying reward yourself with dopamine rushes. Don't.
But on the opposite side to that,
binge them.
It will give you dopamine, doesn't it? But just out of my personal experience, sometimes when I'm watching stuff at the moment, the way Britain is at the moment with all that, I won't go into it, but all the problems we've got going on, I find myself sometimes, instead of getting a dopamine fix, I'll be getting angry. I'll be getting annoyed. I'll have resentment for nothing. You know what I mean? And that's why I wanted just to touch quickly on the social, you know, media side, because I found myself, you know, recently getting really angry about stuff I'm not really bothered about.
Yeah.
And it's like the people who are in charge of pushing the agenda through social, you know, and I'm thinking about stuff that I don't want to think about.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect my life. You know, my personal life, my working life, it doesn't affect it. But I found myself like you doom scrolling for an hour. And when I've got off it, the wife's asked me something, I've snapped at my wife. And it's like, well, why have I done that? I was happy when I went on.
Yeah.
So I think it does have a, you know, I know we're just pushing across it now, and maybe we'll do another podcast on social media. But I think podcasts like this will open the doors for other people to either come on here or talk to a loved one or a friend or colleague. And I think if we can all work together, we can give each other dopamine hits rather than it being synthetically produced. It's like if you watch a film, I can't watch films anymore. Yeah. Because of social media, because my attention span's about 10 minutes. I mean, max.
They say that's the average.
Exactly. So we've lost about 90% of the people now not listening.
They say that's about, I think it used to, about 10 years ago, it used to be about 12 minutes, and now it's 8.
Yeah, it's I've found myself now really struggling to, I put a film on, and if I really want to watch this film, 20 minutes max, and I'm like, looking at my phone, thinking about something.
But if you think we've been sat in here now, the three of us, for an hour talking, we've not got our phones out of our pockets once and scrolled through any of them.
No.
And we've probably talked more than we ever have.
Yeah, exactly. And how good does it feel to have an open and honest conversation like this? Whereas what we would have been doing is sat on, you know, if we were in a work environment or we were waiting in the shop or something, we'd be sat there on our phone just scrolling through it, looking at Facebook, looking at Instagram. And it's so, you know, I mean, I came off Twitter, or X as it's now known, because it was doing exactly that to me. It was making me angry, it was making me anxious. And I heard a quote that really resonated with me. I was like, if you're worrying about yesterday and you're anxious about tomorrow, you've already written off today, because you're not being present in the moment, and there's so much value to be had in being present in the moment and just like enjoying things. That, you know, I took my son out last week picking blackberries around G Cross and it was an amazing day, and we made blackberry jam when we got home, and Didn't look at my phone once. I might have took my phone out to take pictures of him.
Yeah.
But we enjoyed the sunshine. You know, we're out in nature, made jam, and it was, you know, it sounds daft, but it was a great day. And I'll look back on that and think, oh, that was a really nice day that we had together. I won't look back on, you know, a few days ago and think, oh, I sat in my bedroom scrolling through my phone for an hour.
Exactly. And that's what we do. We're missing out on life.
Yeah, we are.
I'm as guilty as the next person, so I'm not sat here saying I'm not. I am. And
Yeah.
I'm realising now, the older I'm getting, I spend time with my grandchildren a lot now, me and the wife.
Yeah.
They're precious times for me now.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, like you just explained with your wife, you don't know what's around the corner.
No, it's
So
scary, innit?
I want to finish this podcast on a real positive. So if I can ask you two, individually, to give me one positive thing you can give the audience, whoever's listening, to help with mental health. So, Joe, you want to go first?
Yeah, mine's obviously, because mine comes from anxiety. As I mentioned before, like, I like to talk, but not too much. Like listening to Paul, it's like I'm explaining that I have like a few little panic attacks here and there, and he's been through the absolute ringer in his family life. So it's like, it's not like mine now don't matter kind of thing. But it in my sense, I was embarrassed to talk because, like I said, my body wanted to cry, and no, let's be honest, no bloke wants to just cry in front of a million, like not a million people, but a group of people. So mine would be to talk, but talk to a point where it makes you comfortable for it. Like, when I started mentioning it to people, I was much more comfortable, and then just the little things. I literally looked at my arm, then I noticed that I've got my elastic band on. I was supposed to mention it before, but I forgot. But then I think it was one of your videos.
Oh yeah, I did a video
about
on that.
snapping the band.
Yeah, it breaks the cycle.
And it was just when Paul said that you've got to come back to reality and be in the moment. Like I said, oh, she wrote tomorrow off. That happens, especially with anxiety. That can happen because something could be going on tomorrow, or something could be going on today, and you're not in the real world then. So, for me, the band, because it just gives you that little. It does just all of a sudden for a millisecond just puts you back in your place, and that's what, when I went on like the CBT, I think it was on for about 7 weeks, but it was online, so I was getting checked up on the phone, but I had things to do and tasks to complete. That was after I was a little bit kind of. That wasn't football related or coaching related. That was more. I was basically quite ill on a holiday. Always having to go to the toilet, kind of spoiled it for me, missus, because I was a bit like, I wasn't there. Went to Barcelona and I wasn't mentally there because all I'm thinking about is I'm far away from home here, far away from my hospital, like if something's wrong with me here, I'm far away from everything. And then got home, I was crying on 111, convinced myself I was ill. My mate, Lyndon, you'll know, took me to hospital. I went in the 111 bit. They said, just come and get in. Took my obs, and I said, Lynn, this ain't going to be good, mate. And the doctor called me in, and I was like, great. And he said, sit down. So the first question he asked me was, do you struggle with anxiety? And I went, yeah. He said, I know. And I said, why? Is it on my GP thing? And he went, no. I said, your observations are 100%. There's nothing wrong with it. And he went, and I was crying to this doctor. He's hugging me. And he's the one that then said, I don't want to put you on medication, but that's an option. Yeah. So, but all that time, still about 2 weeks after I got that, I wasn't in the real world. Yeah. I wasn't living in reality. So I think for me, my two messages would be is find a way to be present when you're struggling. Find a way to be there that's comfortable. Be in the real world as much as you can, because it's a fight being in the real world, because then your head just takes you straight back out of it and you've got to come back, and that's where it can become a little bit upsetting. But try and stay present as much as you can. and then obviously talk when you're comfortable to talk, and talk in a way that makes you feel better, not in a way that, you know, you kind of just talking for talk. Yeah, find a way that works for you. Don't have to go for every. You might not have to mention all the things you don't want to mention, but mention the things that in that moment, right? If I just mention this, it's miles better. If I worked with a coach and the coach said to me, "Are you okay like doing the explaining?" and then I'll step in once I'm settled. I totally get it. But if I got given a coach and they said, "Oh, this coach gonna get them doing things," I'd get them doing things. Whereas if they just said to me, "Listen, can I have like a minute?" You know, that's perfect time. Like, and that's obviously just using like my kind of experience as well.
So be honest with yourself then.
Just be present and talk like we're all gonna keep preaching. Just open up. Yeah.
For you, Paul?
Yeah, I think we're very much in the midst of a mental health pandemic at the minute, mate. I think, I was reading the other week, there's 7 million people that are currently on mental health medication in this country. There's 2 million people on a waiting list for counselling or support with the mental health. And, how many times has the M60 been closed in recent weeks where people have sadly ended their lives and stuff? It's becoming, like, so frequent now. And as a quote, there's a statistic Andy's man club uses a lot around suicide being the biggest killer of men under the age of I think it's 50. And what I would say is there are options and there's avenues that for people to explore, but there's so much, like I mentioned before, there's so much power in talking and getting things off your chest and being able to open up in a safe space. Please, just explore what's out there. If you're listening to this and you're going through a mental health crisis yourself, there's plenty of clubs and spaces, and there's so much power in talking to people. I'm just going to plug Andy's man club here, but
you go ahead.
There's one at the Etihad Stadium. There's one in Ashton. There's one in Denton. There's one in Staley Bridge. We're looking at opening one up in Stockport. There's one in Macclesfield. There's one in Altrincham. There's one in Old Trafford if you're a United fan. There's one there every Monday, 7 till 9 p.m. I can't emphasise enough how important it is to use these options that are there. So please don't give up. Like I said before, it's a moment in time and it'll pass.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say a massive heartfelt thank you to you guys for taking your time out on this Saturday morning, doing this podcast. I've learnt a lot in this hour talking to you guys. You've been amazing. If anybody wants to come on this podcast, I've got an email. It's thebarbershoppodcast@yahoo.com. Just email me on there and I'll get back to you. But if anybody's local listening to this and wants to come in and talk, that's perfect. So I just want to say again, a big thank you to Joe and Paul for taking your time out. And this has been the Barbershop Podcast. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I'll catch you all later. Peace.